Oh, no, sorry, it's the Education Minister and Senior Lib Dem David Laws. Welcome
back
to the program.
Welcome.
Haven't seen you for a while. So, 8 billion more for the NHS by 2020, 5 billion more for the education by 2020. And you're doing it all on borrowed money. Isn't that irresponsible?
We're certainly not doing it on borrowed money, Andrew. What we're doing is this. Firstly, we've set out, and we actually gave all the details of this at the weekend, our costings in much greater detail than all the other parties. We're setting out a plan to balance the budget by 2017-2018.
Balance the current budget.
Balance the current budget,
not
exactly.
The budget.
By 2017-18, we've set out the tax, the welfare, the tax avoidance measures that we need for that. And then after 2017-18, this is really important, we're making a different decision from the Conservative Party. And what we're actually going to do is grow public expenditure in line with the economy.
And you're going to borrow more.
While meeting that fiscal rule, only for real productive capital
investment. You're going to borrow more.
Which would be a small amount. Well, we'd be borrowing for real productive capital investment, and we wouldn't potentially be running the surplus on the current budget that the existing fiscal
You're borrowing to put money into the NHS and into education, and that is not going to be all capital. Well, what bit that I don't understand then? Because I've just been through Danny Alexander's figures, and he did it under the imprimatur of the Treasury. You plan to spend £833 billion by 2019-20, and you plan revenues of £817 billion. By my arithmetic, that is a deficit of borrowing of £16 billion. You're spending £8 billion on the NHS, you're spending £5 billion on education. That's £13 billion. You're borrowing 16. You're borrowing to spend.
No, we're not doing that at all.
Well, you're borrowing £16 billion.
What we're doing is only borrowing after 2017-18 for real productive capital investment. Every economist in the world, as you know, Andrew, says that it is rational and sensible if you've got massive capital infrastructure projects that have returns over a long period of time to potentially borrow for those only where there are economic returns which come in over a long period of time. What we're not doing that borrowing for, make absolutely clear about that, is using it to fund current expenditure in the NHS or education. And if we weren't doing, this is the important point, if we weren't doing the infrastructure investment, then actually you wouldn't have any borrowing at all for that period of time. We're not.
But you do not deny that you will still be borrowing £16 billion by the end of the next Parliament.
That's about the right level, and that is borrowing for infrastructure investment, and that is perfectly
at the end
sensible.
of the day, it's all going into the same pot.
Any economist would tell you that it's rational to borrow for real infrastructure investment.
Well, not maybe if you're starting out with a deficit of 90 billion, which is what you're leaving behind the country this year.
That is why there is a second fiscal rule that we have, which is not only to not borrow for that current expenditure, but also to make sure that we get the debt to GDP ratio down to sustainable levels by the middle of the next decade. And we can do that while allowing for this modest amount of spending on infrastructure, which is perfectly sensible.
Why would you make your central pledge on the manifesto today on education, which is the subject you are most famous for breaking your word about?
Well, let me answer that in two ways. Firstly, education is a massive passion for our party. It's important for economic growth, for skills in the modern international environment. It's crucial.
But you broke your word on it.
It's crucial for creating a fair society. And when you come back to look at the 2010 manifesto, of course, and this is not a state secret, we acknowledge that we were not able to deliver what we had in the manifesto on tuition fees. What we did deliver, in fairness, is what we put on the front page of that manifesto, a £2.5 billion pupil premium, an investment in disadvantaged youngsters.
Let's just remind ourselves what you did pledge.
Yeah.
I pledged to vote against any increase in fees. You're now pledging to spend an extra £5 billion on education. Why should we have any more sense to believe you on this now when a lot of people believed you on that? Well, look what you did to them.
Let me say this. Firstly, if you look at what was on the front page of our manifesto, the big pledges that matched these last time, increasing the tax allowance, something David Cameron said that we couldn't do, we delivered that. Introducing the pupil premium, we've delivered that. Stabilising the economy, we've delivered that.
So we should only take you seriously on what's on the front page.
Well,
the rest of it's just cutting down trees. It's only the front page we should read, because the rest of it is just a wing and a prayer.
Like all political parties, Andrew, we want to deliver, and I want to deliver as much of possible of our manifesto. But if you don't win an overall majority in Parliament, you find, just as we did, just by the way as David Cameron did, that you can't deliver all of your manifesto.
You were never going to win an overall majority.
David Cameron did not
You were never going to win an overall majority.
Let me just finish this point. David Cameron did not deliver the pledge. He said this the other day on inheritance tax in his manifesto. People should be challenging of all of them.
I'm well aware of that. As you know on this programme,
yes.
They are all challenged.
In fairness to you, you are. But my point is, if you don't win a majority, you can't deliver everything in the manifesto.
But let me just ask you this. You decided in the end, when you came to power, formed the coalition, and you were at the heart of it in the early days, you decided that deficit reduction had become more important than tuition fees. That's why you junked tuition fees. What is to stop you deciding by the time you come to 2020, if the economy doesn't go the way you think it is, that deficit reduction will be once again more important than $5 billion for education?
Well, firstly, it's a bit more than that. In 2010, we were faced with a parliament where the vast majority of MPs, both of the Labour Party and of the Conservative Party, were committed essentially to putting tuition fees up. So in other words, they had the completely opposite policy to the one that we did. And that's one of the reasons we were not able to deliver. But you can rest assured, Andrew, that having learnt some of the lessons of tuition fees, we have done a huge amount of work about what we've chosen to put on the front page of this manifesto. And these 5 priorities that we've put on the front page of the manifesto, we believe that we will be able to deliver in the next Parliament, if there's a hung Parliament, and we're happy to be judged on that.
Right, but again,
of the other policies, I'll deliver as many of those as we can.
But you may be forced to decide that other things are more important by then. After all this is predicated on the proceeds of economic growth. You are assuming that this economy just carries on growing at 2.5% for the foreseeable future. You're assuming that the bond markets, where we borrow, where you'll be borrowing your money, remain benign.
Well, let me say,
none of these things may be true by the time you get to 2020, and you may junk your promise.
Every political party that stands for an election, and every Chancellor of the Exchequer, has to set out plans during governments and into the next Parliament based on sensible economic forecasts. In our case, those set by the Office of Budget Responsibility.
And you all assume that trees will grow to the sky, that the economy will just keep on growing.
But you can also rest assured that the amount of money that we'd have to put into public services is a consequence of the different pledge that we're making from the Conservatives, that we would grow public spending in line with the economy after 2017, 2018. We have not spent all of that money. We're being extremely prudent.
So if the economy doesn't grow, you can't afford this?
We will deliver these. And in the same way as...
That's not what I asked. If the economy doesn't grow the way you hope it grows, you cannot deliver these promises.
No, that's the opposite of what I was saying. What I was saying is, actually, not only is this the most sensible way to plan in relation to the Office of Budget Responsibility forecast, but in addition, we are not spending all of the money that we would be able to spend. I could fill this manifesto up with all sorts of other pledges if I wanted to, based on the extra public spending that the Liberal Democrats will put in after 2017, 2018, compared with the Tories. We've not done that. We've been extremely prudent, extremely cautious, and we're happy, and I'm happy, Andrew, to be judged in the next Parliament on whether we deliver what's on the front page of this manifesto.
You see, it's not just tuition fees. I was looking at what you promised in education in 2010. I mean, your track record doesn't exactly engender confidence. You did get the $2.5 billion for the pupil premium. That was in your manifesto, though that was to class sizes to 20 and provide catch-up classes.
We've done that.
Class sizes have actually slightly risen. One-to-one tuition has been scaled back. You promised workplace schemes for...
one-to-one tuition has been scaled back in terms of EdBull's top-down central initiatives. It's not been scaled down in the actual classroom because we've freed head teachers.
All right. Well, I'm giving you the first one. I'll give you the 2.5. But workplace scheme for 800,000 pupils to give them opportunity to gain skills. That hasn't been met. 15,000 extra places on foundation degree courses, which can lead to undergraduate. None of that seems to have happened. Raise the adult learning grant from £30 to £45 a week. It's still at £30 a week. Cleverest students from the lowest achieving schools guaranteed a degree place. That hasn't happened. Scrap university tuition fees. I think we know what happened with that. Replace academies with schools that are accountable to local authorities. The academy programme has gone through the roof. Slim down the national curriculum. Scale back SATs. Bring back GCSEs levels.
Lots of these things.
None of that has happened.
The national curriculum. We've taken hundreds of pages.
The curriculum was reformed away. You basically failed to deliver on your education manifesto, even in areas where you could have done. Why should we believe you ever on education again.
Andrew, you're a fair-minded man, and not only are some of the points that you've just raised there not accurate, I picked up on the curriculum immediately.
Adult learning grant?
But if you, maybe you're right about that particular one, but if you go through and look at our manifesto, as fair-minded, independent people have done, sorry, I'm not criticising directly there, but I'm talking about people who have a perspective on these things, not just politicians. And you go through and look at what we put in our manifesto last time round. A huge amount of that has been
But on the education side, it's not.
Well, we've delivered the increase in access to early years. We've got the 2-year-old
Cleverest students from the lowest achieving schools guaranteed a degree place. Not.
Goodness, well, we've got many more youngsters from more disadvantaged backgrounds and across the board going on to university.
That's not what this
But if you look at what was in our manifesto last time, I think that we've probably delivered more of our manifesto in this government than even the Conservative
I was simply concentrating
and you
on
can always...
I understand that, but I was concentrating on education because it's education you've put at the centre. My point was to try and work out why we should have confidence in it. But let me ask you this. I don't think you want to answer this. And I understand why.
I always want to answer your question.
And I'm grateful for that, and it makes it unusual, believe me.
Right, okay.
If you answer this, I'll probably have to go and lie in a dark room for a while afterwards. Can you tell us any of this, the $5 billion for education, not cutting welfare by $12 billion, not having a referendum on Europe, are any of these red lines for you in coalition or supply and confidence negotiations? Are anything that you can say, it doesn't matter what happens, we will not give in on this?
Let me give you the best straight answer I can on this, Andrew. No political party, and we're now in a world where any of the parties can expect to be in coalition, could sensibly go through their manifesto and say, that's a red line, that's not.
No.
Because it would be a ludicrous way to negotiate.
What about the front page stuff?
You appreciate that. But what is sensible, and what we've learnt in government, but I think is important for the other parties to learn in a coalition environment, is people do have a reasonable expectation of that your central messages will actually be delivered. So we have spent a long time looking and thinking about the front page. Right. Nick said yesterday, I forgot the formulation of words he used, that basically we do expect to be able to deliver these key pledges on the front page into government.
But are they non-negotiable?
And we'll deliver as much.
Are they non-negotiable? Is the front page non-negotiable?
We expect to deliver the front page.
That's not what I asked you, as you know.
If we go into coalition, we expect to deliver the front page.
I see you smiling because you know yourself you're not answering my question.
No, I think I'm answering it to the best of my ability.
Are they non-negotiable?
We would go in to any talks after the next election. We mustn't get ahead of ourselves, but we would go in, we would put this down on the front, in front of whoever it is that we're talking to, and say, look, this is what we campaigned on. We expect to deliver it. And by the way, there are lots of other policies, and we'll deliver as many of those as possible. But you will judge us, and you're entitled to, by our ability to deliver these things on the front page. We've made that crystal clear.
Well, at least it means I only have to read the front page, so that's a plus, because it looks quite thick. What's your reaction to this? Is this still a party you can do business with?
Yes, I think so. I'm quite interested by how satisfied David's been with the shake the Liberal Democrats got for their manifesto during the last government. I think that's a fair estimate. And actually, speaking personally, I thought they were a constructive influence. But the truth is, whether they're able to achieve these things will depend on how much leverage they have. And it may well be that this time, unlike last time, they don't have the leverage to deliver any party they deal with a majority. And that will make quite a big difference to how much of what they're saying they would achieve. I also think the other thing that they've done in this manifesto is commit themselves to higher taxes in a way that may not prove as prudent as maybe they intended.
Let me. We've run
out of time. There's just one final, a general question I'd like your reaction to. Your party's undoubtedly suffered a degree, quite a substantial degree, of reputational damage by joining with the Tories. That's maybe is inevitable. We see it in the polls, and you will to some extent suffer on May the 7th. We don't know by how much. Would you not suffer even more and suffer in a different way if you were to then do some kind of deal with Labour?
No, look, I think it is difficult being in coalition when you're the smaller of the parties. We know that because that's what's happened right across Europe to smaller parties that have gone in with a larger party in coalition. It's not easy, particularly at a time of austerity. But we have to fight the election, fight it on our manifesto, persuade people that these are the key policies that we are going to advocate, get support for it. And then we need to see what the verdict of the electorate is. And we can't start sort of trying to side guess what that should be. We have to accept the verdict after the election.
David Laws, thank you very much. You should come back and see us more often.
Good, I'd be delighted to, Andrew.
Enjoyable to interview you, and also to have you in the studio and to look you in the eye rather than down the line. Too many politicians are doing these days.
I hope I haven't been excessively helpful in my answers then. I'm worried now about what you're saying.
The voters will be the judge of that. David Laws, thank you.
Thank you very much.